She shouldn't have knocked that late. Or maybe I shouldn't have opened the door that fast. The sound of her voice, low, careful, carried through the doorway before she even stepped in. Your mom told me you were staying here, she said, lifting a bottle of red wine slightly, like an excuse. I thought, you might want company. I'd seen her plenty of times before, at gatherings, brief hellos, polite smiles, but never like this. Never standing in my doorway at 10:43 p.m., her hair slightly undone, her eyes looking as if they'd already decided something before her words caught up. She was my mom's friend, yes. But right then, she didn't feel like anyone's anything, just herself, in that quiet way people do when they stop pretending to be fine. Inside, the house was dim and still. The kitchen light barely reached the living room, so most of her face was lit only when she passed beneath it, a flicker of gold, a shadow, then gold again. She slipped off her shoes by the door without asking. It's strange being here without her, she said, half smiling. I used to come by all the time. I poured the wine while she looked around like she was remembering a different version of the place. The sound of the cork pulling free felt too loud, so neither of us spoke for a few seconds. When I handed her the glass, our fingers brushed, not by accident, but not by design either. She didn't pull away right away. Her hand was warm, cool at the fingertips from the night air. Mine wasn't steady. We sat near the old lamp that hummed faintly when it turned on. She crossed her legs, leaned back, and watched me like she was trying to place me somewhere, not the boy she used to know, not yet the man she'd decided I might be. You've grown up, she said finally, almost a whisper. That's unexpected. I smiled, unsure how to answer. So have you. Her laugh was quiet but real, and then, gone as fast as it came. There was a long silence. The kind that doesn't feel empty, just full of something you're both pretending not to name. Her eyes drifted to my hand on the armrest. She didn't look away when our fingers brushed again. The wine made her cheeks faintly pink, and her voice softened as she said, You shouldn't sit so far away. It looks like you're waiting for someone to save you from talking to me. I moved closer. Not too close, just enough to feel the warmth between us. She tilted her head, studying me like she was testing the moment. Your mom always said you were quiet, she murmured. But I think you just noticed too much. I didn't answer. She wasn't wrong. The smell of her perfume lingered in the air, not floral, not sweet, something dry, earthy, like old books and a warm night. I could hear the faint hum of a car outside, the ticking of the old wall clock, and her slow inhale as she shifted toward me. Then she set her glass down, carefully, and looked at me, really looked. I shouldn't stay long, she said, but didn't move. Then why bring the wine? I asked. Her lips parted, maybe to laugh, maybe to explain. She didn't do either. The air between us thickened. For a moment, it felt like everything else, the noise outside, the lights, the night, had quietly stepped aside. Then, just as she leaned forward, there was a sudden knock at the door. Her eyes widened, caught between guilt and something else. She whispered, almost to herself, You shouldn't leave alone. And before I could ask what she meant, she reached for the doorknob. The knock at the door turned out to be nothing, a neighbor dropping off mail by mistake. By the time I came back, she was standing by the kitchen counter, her glass half full, tracing the rim with one finger. You didn't have to get up, she said without looking at me. I thought you were leaving. I was, she murmured. Then I remembered how quiet my place gets. Her tone was soft, but there was something under it, a confession, almost. I leaned against the counter beside her, careful not to brush her arm. The silence between us had changed, it wasn't awkward anymore, just charged, like a room right before the rain hits. She took another sip and set the glass down. I'd been divorced for 6 years, she said suddenly. You probably knew that. I nodded. My mom mentioned it once. She always did talk too much. She smiled faintly, eyes on the glass. Anyway, I stopped going out after that. I used to paint, host dinners, all of it. Then one day, it just felt easier not to. Her voice softened on the last word, and I saw her throat tighten, that small, involuntary swallow people do when they don't want to cry. I didn't know what to say, so I just stood there, watching her reflection in the window. When she looked up and caught me staring, I looked away too fast. "You do that," she said. "Do what?" "Watch people like you're trying to memorize them." She stepped closer, and the faint scent of her perfume drifted up again, faintly smoky, like she'd been near a candle. Her hand brushed my sleeve when she reached for the bottle, but she didn't move it right away. "Sorry," she whispered. "It's fine." But my voice came out lower than I meant it to. For a while, we didn't talk. She leaned back against the counter, looking up at the ceiling as if she were searching for something she lost there. "You know, your mother wouldn't approve of this," she said, a small laugh breaking the tension. "Of what?" "This, staying late, talking like this." "We're just talking." "I know." But the way she said it made it sound like a lie we were both choosing to believe. Her fingers found the edge of the counter beside mine close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating through the space between us. "I think you remind me of something," she said after a long pause. "What?" "Someone who used to look at me like that. Before I learned not to notice." Her words hung in the air, fragile, uncertain. She took a small breath, then smiled as if to undo it all. "Forget I said that." She started to walk toward the door, shoes still off, her steps slow. I followed, not sure why. When she turned to say goodnight, she reached out, maybe to fix my collar, maybe just to steady herself, but her hand rested on my shoulder instead. Neither of us moved. The hum of the lamp, the faint buzz of the clock, her breath brushing against my neck, everything folded into that single, suspended second. Then she whispered, almost too quietly, "Next time, maybe I'll bring 2 bottles." The next time she came by, it wasn't planned. At least, not by me. I'd been fixing a flickering light in the kitchen when her knock echoed through the quiet, softer this time, like she hoped I wouldn't hear it. She stood there in a light sweater and jeans, hair tied back loosely, holding a small box of pastries. "Peace offering," she said. "For drinking all your wine last time." Her smile was small but real. I stepped aside to let her in. The evening light was fading, the house was all amber shadows in half-lit corners. She moved through the room like she already knew it, brushing her hand over the back of the couch, the shelf, the lamp switch. Every small sound, her breath, the creak of the floor, felt amplified. We sat on the couch this time. Not across from each other, beside. Close enough that when she leaned forward to set the box on the table, a strand of her hair brushed my arm. "You always this quiet?" she asked. "I think better when I'm quiet." She smiled. "Then what are you thinking?" I hesitated. "That this feels strange." "Because of me?" "No," I said quickly. "Because it doesn't." That made her pause. Her eyes lingered on me a moment too long. Then she laughed, softly, nervously, and reached for her phone. A message lit up the screen. It was from my mother. Her name glowed in the dim light like a warning. "Hope you're not boring my friend too much tonight." We both saw it. Neither of us moved. She exhaled through her nose, half amusement, half panic. "See? The universe has a sense of humor." I tried to smile, but my heart was beating too fast. When she finally set the phone face down, the air between us thickened again. She reached for one of the pastries, tearing it apart, crumbs falling on her knee. "You should probably delete that message before she asks who you were with." "Why?" "Because it looks like I've crossed a line." "You haven't." Her eyes met mine. "Not yet." The space between us closed by inches. She was sitting half-turned toward me now, her hand resting on the couch cushion near mine. I could smell the faint trace of her perfume again, lighter this time, almost gone, like she'd tried not to wear any. Her fingers grazed mine, barely. Neither of us pulled away. For a second, everything was still. Just her eyes on mine, the sound of her breathing, and the pulse pounding in my wrist. Then a car honked outside, sudden, sharp, and she flinched back like someone had caught us. She stood, smoothing her sweater, pretending to laugh. "We really shouldn't let this look like something it isn't." I rose too, trying to catch her gaze. "And what is it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out, resting her hand briefly against my chest, just enough to feel my heartbeat. "Whatever this is," she said quietly, "don't make it harder than it already is." Her touch lingered for 1 second too long, and then she was gone, the door closing softly behind her. The scent of her perfume stayed. And so did the space where she'd stood, warm, impossible to forget. It had been 3 days since she last came by. 3 days of checking the window at night, of half-typed messages I never sent. When she finally did appear again, she didn't knock, she just called out softly through the open door, "You left your porch light on." I turned. She stood in the doorway, rain clinging to her hair, jacket half unzipped, breathing like she'd walked fast to get there. "You could have just texted," I said, trying to sound calm. "I did," she said. "Twice." I checked my phone, both messages unread. Her eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me. "You were ignoring me?" "No," I said, too quickly. "Just trying not to make this harder." That stopped her. She stepped inside, shutting the door behind her, the click echoing through the quiet. The air smelled of rain and something faintly floral. She pulled off her damp jacket, draping it over the chair. Her blouse beneath was thin, clinging slightly from the weather. "You've been avoiding me," she said, voice steady but low. "I thought maybe we should stop." "Stop what, exactly?" She moved closer as she said it. "Not accusing, just tired of pretending." I swallowed. "Whatever this is. Before someone notices. Before you feel too much?" The words hit harder than I expected. She was close now, close enough that her breath touched my collarbone when she exhaled. "I already do," I said quietly. Her eyes softened, and for a second, she looked like she might step back, but she didn't. Instead, she reached up and brushed a strand of wet hair from her face, her fingers trembling just slightly. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because I'll believe you." The silence that followed was sharp, alive. Every small sound, the rain tapping the windows, her unsteady breathing, my pulse in my ears, filled the space between us. She tried to laugh it off, but her voice caught. "This is ridiculous," she said, shaking her head. "I'm twice your age." "Not quite," I said. "Close enough." Her hand lifted as if to gesture the thought away, but I caught it gently. She didn't pull back. Her skin was warm, soft, cold at the fingertips. "I keep thinking I should feel guilty," she said, her voice breaking into a whisper. "But when I'm here," she stopped, eyes searching mine. "I don't." For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then she stepped closer, slow, deliberate, until her forehead nearly touched mine. The world outside blurred to nothing. Her voice came out barely audible, "Tell me I should leave." I didn't. Her hand slid up my chest, over my shoulder, resting lightly at the back of my neck. Her breath trembled against my lips. We were a single word away from something we couldn't take back, and then, from outside, a phone buzzed against the window ledge, sharp, startling. She froze. Her hand fell away. We both looked at the screen lighting up through the glass, my mother's name glowing in the dark. Her eyes widened, a mix of fear and longing. "Don't answer that," she whispered. I didn't. But the sound kept ringing, filling the silence she'd just left behind. The rain hadn't stopped by morning. It drummed against the windows, steady and endless, the kind of sound that made everything feel suspended in time. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her hand hovering near my face, the way she'd whispered, "Don't answer that." "By noon," she texted, "we need to talk." I almost didn't reply. But she was already outside when I opened the door, umbrella in hand, eyes searching. She looked exhausted. Or maybe afraid. "I shouldn't be here again," she said quietly, stepping inside. But something happened. Her tone made my stomach tighten. She set the umbrella by the door and turned to me, her expression unreadable. "Your mother called me this morning." The words landed like a blow. She asked if I'd stopped by lately. I froze. "And you said?" "That I hadn't." She exhaled, voice trembling. I lied. I don't even know why. It just came out. She pressed her hand against her forehead, pacing a little. She started talking about you. How she worries. How you get too attached, too easily. And all I could think about was how right she might be. Her voice cracked on the last word. I took a step toward her. She doesn't know me anymore. She knows enough, she said. Then softer, and I should have known better. Her eyes glistened as she turned away, brushing her sleeve across her cheek. The space between us felt charged again, but now with guilt and something rawer, deeper. You think this is just me getting attached? I said. I think it's me forgetting who I'm supposed to be. I reached for her wrist without thinking. Then stop pretending you don't want this too. She froze, not pulling away, but trembling. Her pulse was fast beneath my fingers. When she finally turned, her eyes met mine, wet and shining. Do you know what she said about you? She whispered. She said you always fall for people you can't have. Her breath caught. And I realized. I might be one of them now. Her confession hit like a second heartbeat in the room. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, she stepped closer, close enough that her coat brushed against my chest. The smell of rain and her perfume mingled in the air between us. I can't stop thinking about that night, she said softly. And I hate myself for it. Her hand came up to touch my jaw, hesitating halfway. I keep telling myself it's wrong, and then, her voice broke. I leaned in, just enough for her fingers to graze my cheek. She closed her eyes, shaking her head. Your mother trusts me, she whispered. And if she knew, her words trailed off as my hand found hers, holding it still. The silence was unbearable. Finally, she whispered, if we cross this line, there's no going back. Then don't stop me, I said. Her eyes opened, uncertain, alive, terrified. And instead of moving away, she took one trembling step closer. The storm had passed by the time she came back again, a thin ribbon of twilight spilling through the half-open curtains, the air thick and still. I hadn't expected her. But when I opened the door, she was already there, standing in the fading light, hair unpinned, eyes tired and soft. She didn't speak. Just stepped inside, closing the door behind her. I could hear her breathing. I could feel mine trying to match it. You shouldn't have come, I said quietly. I know, she murmured. But I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. Her gaze dropped to the space between us, the small, invisible line we'd been circling for weeks. She took a step closer. My back brushed against the edge of the kitchen counter. I kept trying to convince myself it was nothing, she said. That I was just lonely. That you were just kind. And now? She looked up at me, her voice trembling. Now I'm not sure if I'm ashamed or alive. The air felt heavy. Her hand lifted, almost unconsciously, tracing the collar of my shirt, slow, uncertain. You don't make this easy, she whispered. I'm not trying to. Her fingers stilled, resting over my heartbeat. You're young, she said. You still have 100 people to meet. I don't want 100, I said. Just the one who can't stop pretending she doesn't feel this. She inhaled sharply, eyes closing for a moment, like the words had hit somewhere too deep. Then she opened them again, stepping in until our foreheads touched. The world seemed to shrink to the rhythm of our breaths. Every detail became unbearable, the faint scent of her shampoo, the warmth of her skin, the trembling in her hands as they rested against my chest. This isn't fair, she said softly. Neither is pretending it isn't real. Her lips parted, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath against my mouth. But she didn't move closer. Not yet. Her eyes searched mine, scared, certain, breaking open. I told myself I'd never do this again, she said. Not after the last time I let someone close. What happened? He left, she whispered. And I stopped believing anyone meant what they said. I reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Then let me prove you wrong. For a second, she looked at me like she wanted to, like every wall she'd built was one word away from falling. Her hand slid behind my neck, her breath hitched, and she whispered, "This is the part where I should walk away." "Then why aren't you?" She smiled, barely, and finally, painfully slowly, leaned in until her lips hovered just a breath from mine. But she stopped. The pause stretched long enough for both of us to understand. She pressed her forehead against mine again, whispering, "Now you know." And I did, that she wanted me just as much, but that wanting and having weren't the same thing. She stepped back, eyes wet, voice steady. "Some things you feel," she said. "Others you live with." And before I could answer, she turned and walked out, leaving the door half open, the air still trembling with everything we hadn't done. Days passed before I saw her again. Her absence had weight, the kind that filled rooms and clung to air. Every sound reminded me of her, the hum of the lamp she used to sit beneath, the faint trace of her perfume still clinging to the fabric of the couch. I told myself she'd made her choice, that I should respect it. But one evening, just as the sun began to fall behind the trees, there was a soft knock, the same quiet rhythm I'd learned to recognize without even thinking. When I opened the door, she was there. No wine this time. No umbrella. Just her, calm, unhurried, her eyes steady but softer than before. "I thought you weren't coming back," I said. "I almost didn't," she replied. "But I kept thinking about how I left." She stepped inside slowly, glancing around as if the house itself might remember. "I told myself it was wrong," she said. "That what we felt was temporary. But that wasn't the truth." I stayed quiet, afraid that speaking might break whatever fragile peace she'd brought with her. She looked at me then, not nervously this time, but with a kind of quiet surrender. "I've been afraid of what people might think. Of what it would say about me. But I'm tired of being afraid." Her hand brushed mine, deliberate, gentle. "I don't want to live like I owe the world an explanation for something that finally feels real." I turned my hand, threading my fingers through hers. She didn't pull away. There was no grand gesture, no dramatic pause. Just a small exhale from her lips, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. We stood there, in the soft amber light, saying nothing. The moment wasn't loud or cinematic, it was quiet, human, exactly what both of us needed it to be. She smiled faintly. "You always listen more than you talk." "You talk enough for both of us," I said, and she laughed, a small, warm sound that filled the room like sunlight through rain. When she stepped closer, her hand rested against my chest again, right where it had before. Only this time, there was no hesitation. I leaned down, brushing my forehead against hers. She closed her eyes, her breath slow and steady against my skin. No promises. No secrets. Just that closeness, fragile, honest, earned. Later, we sat together on the couch, sharing what was left of the last bottle she'd brought. The rain had started again outside, soft and rhythmic. She leaned her head on my shoulder, her fingers tracing small circles over the back of my hand. "This feels impossible," she whispered. "Then maybe that's what makes it worth it." She smiled without opening her eyes. "You sound like someone who's going to stay." "I am," I said. "If you want me to." She didn't answer with words, just tightened her fingers around mine, holding on like she finally believed she could. The silence that followed wasn't tense this time. It was full of everything we'd been, and everything we might still be. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?